Hey, welcome to this Tuesday with Michelle. I am your girl, Michelle, bringing you the hottest content this Tuesday. What's going on, everybody? What's good? What's popping? What's new? I really hope you're all doing well. I'm doing well. I'm just feeling hashtag blessed. Right now it's summertime where I am, so really, really excited to just have the sun shining. Feeling grateful, guys. And the reason I'm feeling so grateful is also because of the support that you guys have given me on this podcast. Thank you for all the comments, for all the engagement, for the feedback, just everything that every single person has done to support this podcast, for sharing, for anything that you've ever done, presenting on the podcast or, being a guest on the podcast. I'm just so, so grateful for all of you. And I want you guys to know that I'm honestly very, very humbled and truly excited for the journey that we've all been on. So that part is done, we can go into the content. So we're back, guys, with doing series. So we did a whole series on love languages, right? And now we're gonna do a series on boundaries in relationships. Gosh, and I'm so excited. And I'm really grateful to God because I was like, Lord, I need something to tell the people. I need like a topic. I need something. And God provides, guys. Can we say hallelujah? Amen. So I'm just really grateful for that. So what's going to happen is in this episode, I'm going to do an intro to boundaries. And then as we go on, we'll have an episode dedicated, a Tuesday episode dedicated to each boundary. So we're going to have quite a number of these episodes, and I'm really going to try to have them be as short as possible. Y'all know your girl likes to talk. Okay. So I'm going to make sure that we keep it kind of short and sweet for the summer. And of course, I love all my winter people. So anybody who's in winter time right now, I'm going to keep it short and sweet for you as well. And also, if there are other parts of the world that are not in summer or winter and that are like in between something else, listen, I'm going to keep it short and sweet for everybody. Okay? So that's it. All right. Let us go into the intro to boundaries. So, what is a boundary, right? Because we're going to be talking about boundaries in relationships, but it's key for us to know what a boundary is. So, according to a simple Google search, a boundary is a line that marks the limits of an area, a dividing line, or it's a limit of a subject or sphere of activity. That's what a boundary is. It's basically a limit. I think that boundaries are really there to protect you as the person. So the boundaries don't have much to do with the other people, but they have everything to do with you because it's about your limits, your needs, and what makes you feel comfortable. So that's why you want to have boundaries, because it's about you. It's about protecting your space and protecting everything to do with you, right? So in order for you to be able to set boundaries, you need to get to know yourself. You need to be introspective, really reflect and figure yourself out so that you can know what those boundaries are. And then after you know what your boundaries are, and this is in the context of a relationship, you should then be able to clearly articulate those boundaries to your partner. Okay. And I think there's a lot of miscommunication or just things sometimes don't go well in relationships because people have boundaries, but they haven't communicated their boundaries to their partners. So inside yourself, you know that like, oh, this is something that I won't tolerate, but you haven't actually expressed that verbally to your partner. And so your partner is not a prophet, okay? They can't guess. They can't guess like what's on your mind or like a mind reader. So you have to be able to like communicate what your boundaries are to your partner. And the whole reason why you would do that is because when you've then communicated what your boundary is to someone, and then also when you say what the consequences of the boundaries being broken are, then you've essentially given that person a choice, right? Like you've put it in their hands that, hey, I've told you that this is my limit and these are my needs. And essentially, if you're not able to meet that, this is what will result from that, right? And then that person gets to decide, do I want to abide by the boundaries or do I not want to abide by this person's boundaries? One thing that I will clearly stress here is that while a lot of us might have boundaries, and I'm also guilty of this, I'm pretty sure I have a whole bunch of boundaries that I haven't expressed to people. We need to be able to like look within ourselves and also clearly communicate those boundaries to people. I will say though that it's happened to me where it's like I didn't know that I had a boundary or like a certain boundary. And I only knew that I had a boundary when someone did something that triggered the boundary, right? So you can imagine, you know what? Let's be more dramatic about this. You know how in action movies they have those lasers, like those red lines that will be pointing everywhere. And then I feel like if you then like if the laser, if you like hit it, right, like it might set the alarm off. I feel like I've seen this in movies, guys, so please just try and work with me on this analogy. Anyway, so imagine those red lines being like, they cannot be seen by the eyes. But then a person like hits that little laser line and then it sets off an alarm. So that's happened to me. Where it's like I hadn't communicated something as a boundary because clearly in my mind, I think it was just assumed knowledge. Then somebody does something that triggers it, right? Now, how I have handled it and how I would suggest that people, handle it is that when someone does something that crosses the line for you and you hadn't communicated it to them before. And also, guys, this has absolutely nothing to do with like physical violations or anything like that. So for me, this had something to do with like, say, hanging up the phone without saying goodbye, right? So for me, when someone does something for the first time, right? Maybe, this first time I can forgive you and be like, okay, maybe I'm being too quick about this. Maybe you were in a rush and you had to go and you just hung up the phone, right? But then if it happens a second time, which this actually happened, it happened a second time. And then I addressed it and I was like, look, I can't stand it when people hang up the phone without saying goodbye. So I just want you to know that this is a big problem for me. Like phone calls need to end with a clear goodbye. You can't just hang up mid-sentence, you're gone. Right. So that's an example of like communicating a boundary. And all of this is to say, like within this example, right, that sometimes you might not know the boundaries at the beginning, but then someone does something and then you're like, oh, no, 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 no. There's a boundary that's been crossed. Then you communicate it. And the whole thing is that you want to communicate it to the other person because it's unfair to kind of have all these expectations on people when people actually don't know that like they're crossing lines, right? So be able to communicate that with people. And something that I also saw in one of the articles that I read was that effective boundaries need to include consequences. So you can't just say like, hey, I can't stand it when you do this, and then you just leave it like that, right? Because that allows people to just still continue, or like your significant other, they might still continue to just cross the line because there's no consequence for what they've done, for their action, right? So in order for your boundary to be effective, you need to be like, if this happens, then this, right? So when I was reading online, an example that they gave was like, sometimes it's obviously very, very clear. For example, like you could say to your partner, if you ever slap me, I'm leaving you. Like that's the end of the relationship, right? So those are very, very clear. Like if this action happens, then this, right? So being able to have consequences that are attached to the boundaries makes them effective. Now, something that I thought was very interesting as well was that they mentioned that when you set consequences for certain actions, you need to make sure that the consequence goes with what you're basically, that the consequence makes sense for whatever's going on, right? So, for example, you can't be like, hey, if you eat from my plate, I'm ending the relationship. Okay, to me, that, hey, if it's your boundary, that's your boundary, that's your business, right? Like, but for me, it just seems a bit drastic, It seems a bit drastic. I feel like for that, I would be like, hey, like, if you finish like my food or you eat my food, then you have to buy me another meal. That seems more like a consequence that goes with the action, right? So they said you need to kind of look at the action or the limit that's been crossed and then set an appropriate consequence. And something that is key, something that is absolutely key. Guys, English is something else, something that's absolutely key. Something that is key is to be able to follow through. Be able to follow through. So they said that when you set a consequence for a boundary being broken, you need to be willing to take action when that limit, or if that limit is crossed, if that boundary is crossed, and you said you would do this, you need to be able to follow through. Because if you don't follow through, then you essentially like let somebody know that like it's a free pass. Like they can always do whatever they want to do, and they essentially won't have to follow anything that you tell them about your boundaries. So make sure that the consequence you state is something that you can follow through. Otherwise, people won't respect your boundaries. So yeah, so that's that, guys. Let me know what you guys think about this intro to boundaries. I think it's gonna be a good time as we go on unpacking what those boundaries are. And I actually wondered if I should share the boundaries with you in this episode to let you know what's coming, or if I should wait. I'm just gonna share it. Okay. So they're gonna be 7 boundaries. We're gonna talk about physical boundaries, emotional boundaries, sexual boundaries, intellectual boundaries, material boundaries, time boundaries, and expectation boundaries. It's gonna be fun, guys. Not just fun. I think it's gonna be real good lessons. And I learn when I do these episodes because obviously it takes a lot of reading up on stuff, right? So I'm definitely learning, definitely looking forward to learning these 7 boundaries that'll be coming up. So that's it. Make sure that if you haven't followed the podcast, that you follow the podcast. If you haven't followed on Instagram, make sure you follow on Instagram. I do this thing, guys, where I play music, like love music. So you just see like a tune pop up and you'll be like, oh wow, this sounds very, very nice. So anyway, so yeah, so make sure you follow on Instagram, and make sure that if whatever platform you're listening to, you're subscribed to it so that when episodes come, you're notified. Hit that bell button. Okay. That's it from me, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you all have a good day, good afternoon, or a good evening, wherever you are. Peace.
Ndiwe